Hey everybody, this is part 2 of the Implied contour still life, and as you can see I have pretty much the same setup. Unfortunately, one of my cats did jump in that box and roll around a bit, so I had to reposition things, and the lemon went in the fridge overnight. If you want to, you can try taping down your objects if you can't leave them in place wherever you have them set up, or you could use something called museum glue, which is used by museums to stop things that they have on display that are fragile to not fall over and be knocked over and break or whatever. Or you could draw some lines around where the bottom of each thing is if you want to. I'll leave that up to you. Anyway, in the first part of the video, just to recap, I didn't do a lot of talking. I'm going to do a slower version of that. I sped it up because it was about a 25, almost a 30-minute video while I did all of the basic elements and the measurements and everything. What I did was use something called sighting. I'm going to do a separate little video, more specifically how to do that. That's where you take one, usually your smallest item, one or two smaller items in your still life, and you use the height and the width of that to measure everything else, so that everything will be in proportion. And you can also draw diagonal lines to get the angles right, and central axis to help you as well. I started out with the small cube and I measured everything against that, and I also used that circular spherical form to the left of the cube as well. Okay, so I got the basic outline. I drew with pretty light lines for the most part. I darkened some of them up. I erased. In this drawing you're allowed to erase. You're allowed to change things. You don't have to do one continuous line or anything like that. And now I'm going to go back in, since it's still an implied contour drawing. I'm going to darken up some of my lines, and I'm going to try and use the darkness and the crispness of the line to create spatial depth, because even with a line drawing you can create that feeling. Objects that are closer to you, or even the front of an object, the lines will be a little bit darker and they'll get lighter as they go off to the back of the object. I've also used overlapping. I have certain objects in front of other objects so we can tell their spatial distance because they're in front of that. And this was my setup. Just to show you, I took a photo of everything. I think I used the same angle. It might have gotten a slightly different angle actually, because that was before I started drawing. Anyway, you can do that. Take a photograph of whatever your still life setup is in case you can't leave it there and you want help setting it back up again. That's very helpful to do that. So when I started working on this, I was working with my kneaded eraser and an HB pencil. I use HB pencil most of the time, and you can use, as I mentioned, if you want to get a lighter line, you would use pencils in the H range, darker line pencils in the B range. I'm going to go back into this with a woodless pencil. These tend to be a little bit darker, so it's just a graphite pencil, and this is a Koh-i-Noor Progresso 6B, so this is a darker pencil. I'm going to use that for some of the darker outlines. Now when you're sighting, just to go over this a little bit, I'll go over it more in the video where I actually show you how to do that. Just make sure you're holding your pencil up to whichever object you're going to use, and you put the top of the pencil at the top of the object and your thumb at the bottom, and then you get the height of that as it looks from wherever you're looking at. And then say I would move it over to there and I would count how many of the height of that do I have in that cone, and I have about 3.5, I think, in the height. And to get the width, your arm should be totally straight out when you're doing this. I do the same thing, but I just turn my pencil the other way and I measure the width, and then I can go over to my object and see how many, and I have probably almost 2, not quite 2. And the width of that. So that's a really good way to get all your proportions of your objects right, rather than just looking at everything and trying to do it that way. Okay, so we're going to go back in, and I'm still not going to focus too much on detail and that type of thing. I'm not trying to do textures or anything like that. I'm not doing any shading. I'm just doing the contour, and I'm trying to get the form. So again, as I said, I already darkened this one up a little bit. I'll go over it again. start out with this. The lines in the front of an object are going to be darker and a little bit more focused. And then as they move away, off to if there's a vanishing point, these are all shown as if they were in perspective too. And they get slightly lighter. So the front line is going to be darker than the back. And then also an object behind would be lighter also. So as you go along, if you feel like some lines are a little bit too dark or too light, you can go in and erase or darken up some lines. Almost like a little triangle. Now, what I'm doing here is I was doing this as I was doing this yesterday, but I was concentrating more on the measurements of things, but now I'm looking at the actual contours that I'm seeing, the actual shapes that form these objects, because this is a basic sphere, but it's much more naturalistic, and there's areas that actually look like little triangular points and things like that. I'm going to make this part a little bit darker, darken this up. Of everything, the lemon is probably the closest object. It's kind of a competition between those two. It looks like the lemon, I changed the position of the lemon a little bit too much maybe. And you can see how much darker a line I can make with a 6B versus an HB pencil. I can go off. Another thing I can do is I use my eraser. I can lighten with the kneaded eraser, and I can also smear. I can use my fingers so that objects, the part of the object that's closer, the lines will look more crisp on that part, and they'll start to get more faded as they move away, which is what happens in perspective. This one could be a little bit lighter. Go back to the lemon. Got this little part over here. As the lemon is moving away, the line's going to be softer. You can see here, this is something you'll see even if you look at master drawings. This is not taping down as well because I have a larger piece of paper behind here. Take this down because otherwise it's going to move around. When you look at master drawings, even the greatest artists, the most talented people at drawing and being draftsmen or draftswomen, you'll see they usually have more than one line there because they don't draw everything perfectly. They're always correcting themselves. It's something you have to learn to do as you're drawing. If you see something looks a little bit different than the way you have it, then you can go back in and correct it, and don't be afraid to do that. It's all a learning process. And it's just a drawing. You can always do another one. If you felt like you did something that totally messed it up, you can always go back in and correct in another drawing or just try another one. Now you see the way I'm holding my pencil? I'm holding it in what's called the tripod position. Another way you can hold it is like this, and you can make lighter lines. That's going to be in one of the textbooks that I recommend that you try. The way you really probably don't want to hold it is like that, the way you use it to write, because you're going to get a much darker line. In the beginning when you started drawing, I tend to hold a little bit further away, but I prefer the tripod position. You can get a lighter line that way, because you're not pressing so much with the point. So I'm just looking at all my shapes. What is the actual contour of the object? Darkening up and defining. Whoops. Just go back in. Shape and I had corrected it. Now one thing you'll notice when you're drawing rectilinear forms, I'm going to show you in the next one of the next videos how to draw them in perspective just from imagination without looking at them. The lines that would go to a vanishing point are going to be parallel, and lines that are horizontal and perpendicular are also going to be parallel. Now because my light source is coming from the right, well it's actually coming a little bit from the front and above, but this would create a harder line over here where the shadow is on this cylinder. Softer line over here. This would be the lightest line. Quinn! Oh my god, I knew this was going to happen. I have to lock my cat out of here. Quinn, get out of here. Quinn. Alright, we're going to have a Siamese cat in here. I'm not going to draw him. He's already the subject of one of my paintings, a few of them actually. Sorry about that. Thank you, dear. Another thing to do while you're drawing is take some breaks, and also don't forget to stand up and walk back a few feet from your drawing and look at it, because when you're right in front of the drawing it's really hard to see what's going on. I can see much better now. Things are starting to shape up. You can probably see it better on the video because the camcorder is a little bit further away. Okay, Quinn, I need my chair back. Okay, sweetie, come on. Go down. Quinn. Just remind me for the next video I'm going to lock my cat out of here. Quinn, come on. Okay. keep forgetting about this. This is a dried out lotus blossom. I'm trying to decide, am I going to draw all of the circular shapes? I may add that in as part of an inner contour. And the angle has definitely shifted quite a lot on what it was from what it was originally. So that was one of the objects that got moved and I had to change it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this one, darken this up a little bit. This is in front of this. Well, this coming back to my two foreground objects and darkening them up as I go along. So in the beginning you're starting out with your lighter lines, and in the end you're darkening up your lines, you've corrected things that you wanted to correct, and then you're getting those beautiful contours. Now another way to do this is you could do a Matisse. I have some examples of this in the module. Matisse or an Ellsworth Kelly type of drawing where you just do maybe a very, very light drawing and then go over it, but do a more spontaneous drawing like you did with the other drawings we did with the line contour and the gesture contour. Bringing my horizon line or the back line of the back wall, which will definitely, that's the thing that's farthest away, so that'll be softer. Do this cylinder shape. Make it softer at the back as it rolls over. It's actually a little bit skinnier. The angle has totally changed now, so I should have got this angle better before I did that. Alright, I'll just correct this and then I'll be done. Believe it or not, this was actually one of the harder things for me to draw in this drawing. Okay, so I think I did a pretty good job. I'm satisfied with this now, and this could be the basis for a painting. Actually, this should be a little bit over. Go up more like that. Which is partly why that looks a little odd over there. Once you have a setup like this, you could use this as a basis for a painting. A lot of artists start out, in the past and even now will start out with contour drawings, sketches before they do a painting, and you can find even in drawings by masters such as Leonardo, they found by x-raying his first portrait of a woman, Ginevra da Benci, that he did little under drawings with charcoal. He would do a pencil drawing or graphite drawing of his model, and then he would place that drawing onto the canvas, poke little holes in it, and then take a bag of charcoal and do what's called pouncing, and then he would get these little dots of the drawing for the model, for the face and everything that he was going to put in there for the painting. I don't think he did that for whatever he put in the background, which was often a landscape or plant or something like that. Okay, so I have a lovely contour drawing here. You should have fun with yours. If you feel like you don't want to have this many objects, it's too complex if you're just starting out, you don't have any drawing experience, you might want to limit it, have a few less objects than what I put in here. Don't forget to use your sighting. That means you're using your pencil and your arm outstretched to measure the height and width of a smaller object, and then you can see how far away it is from the other objects. You can see how many of that would fit into my tallest object here. That's what I started out with, which was the cone. Just darken that line up, or you could just work on a drawing forever, really. So another thing you want to do, you're going to be working in your sketchbook every day. You want to not overwork a drawing, so if you feel like you're getting fed up with it, you're having trouble with a certain aspect of it, you can go away and come back later and finish that later. Always have more than one thing that you're working on. Your sketchbook, you can put little exercises for the projects we're doing in the class, and you can just draw whatever you want to in there. So take a break. If you do working in other media, you're taking other classes, or you're working with digital or whatever, we're going to be mostly working with what I call by hand. You're not going to be using an iPad to do these drawings, or anything. It's going to be done with pencil, pen and ink, and so on. Okay, so have fun with this. So the next video I'm going to do, they'll probably be in a different order, but you should watch the videos in the order of whatever I have them. So there you have a lovely contour drawing, which is done with sighting, so you have everything carefully measured out, and you've got all your proportions, and everything is good. So have fun with this. Take care.